course in businesses extremely highly is something called the spirit of inquiry. We have been talking a lot about the spirit of inquiry. All the time we tell our kids, think. I recall my mother was a doctor. She used to very good in biology. Of course, she was a doctor. And anytime I had a problem in mathematics and solving a mathematics problem, if I had to go to her, I would go to her, give her the book and say, Mom, can you please help me out in solving this? She would read the question and say, well, read it twice and try. And she would never ever give me the answer. And that helped me a lot in encouraging myself to have this spirit of inquiry, of looking beyond what was very visible. Do you think that kind of a spirit is imbibed into today's students?
Again, a good question. So I'll start by saying the kind of people like your mother are getting more and more rare nowadays. So I have my kids too. There's an enormous pressure to do well at the examinations, and so the time pressure and the pressure of competition forces me as a parent to say, learn what's necessary and learn it well, learn it by rote is what is the kind of advice I would normally give, which I consciously know is wrong. Because the spirit of inquiry, while it is good, is not what is tested in the examinations. So I heard you in a few questions ago talking about another word which I love, and you said flexibility. And if you truly have the flexibility in your syllabus, flexibility in the way you test your students, flexibility in the way you grade them, if you have that flexibility, I would strongly say get that spirit of inquiry into the system somehow. It's very important. It's not enough. To some extent, I see that spark in your students here, that they're asking the right questions, which is direct correlation of the spirit of inquiry. But I think the system actually chokes that spirit of inquiry. It says, don't ask, do. And I want to tell you, students who are watching this, it might sound like a very strange thing to say, but questions are more valuable than answers. So don't run after the answers, run after the right questions. Because it's the right questions that actually sustain you much longer in your career. Ask yourself the right questions. Get people around you, get your leaders, get your managers to think about the right questions. Sometimes stop them in their tracks and say, what about this? Why is this not happening? How can this be done better? So ask the right questions. Let that spirit of inquiry prevail. And I think that's a very good thing you've said. So to answer your question, not enough of it. We need more of the spirit of inquiry. But on a side note, your students have demonstrated some of it, which is really good.
Thank you very much again. Coming to a really interesting question, of course, probably a lot of our viewers would...
Every question has been interesting. I'm enjoying this.
Would want to probably hear it from you, from directly the horse's mouth, as they say it. But through our internship procedures and internship formalities in the industry, the aim is to make people aware of how the industry works, to make them industry ready, and to enable them to exist in an industry, because industry is a hostile place to be. Either you perform a perish. School's not like that, right? In a school, somebody will come, put their hand on your shoulder and say, hey, you know what, let's try it again. Right? Yeah. But industry at times doesn't allow you to do that. How much important is it to have a sponge culture of yourself, to imbibe as much as you can? How to facilitate that?
Yeah, you're using some lovely words, Ray. I like the word sponge culture. So I think if they understand and they behave like a sponge, the internship is going to be a great thing. But let me be practical. So when you go into the organization as an intern, don't expect to be given those high value adding assignments that will be there for prosperity and say, I helped this organization achieve this, or I helped that organization achieve that. You may not get it. Let's be practical. In fact, you might find after the first few days that you're there in the internship that you may not have even got hold of the key people to even have a conversation with them because they're too busy. So what's the solution? The solution is, on the one hand, you are there, keep that sponge thing aside, I'll come back to it. But the solution is, search for some way in which you can be immediately, instantly useful to the people with whom you're working as an internship. So at that moment, they're grappling with something. They have a problem. They have a shortage of manpower. There's always a shortage of manpower. There's always cost cutting. So don't get put off by the fact that you're free labor. Okay? In fact, wear that tag with pride. I'm free labor. I'll do something that they really want me to do that can immediately make a difference to their work, something that they want to do, even though it's mundane, even though it might be sitting some late nights, do it, do that work, even though if it's very clerical, do it, help them out. When you help them out, you gain an audience with them. But when you're doing that work, be like a sponge. Ask yourself some very basic questions. So this work that I'm doing, why? How can I tie it up to the ultimate objectives of the organization? But what are the objectives of the organization? What is the vision of the organization? What happens before this work comes to me? What happens after this work releases from my hands? How can I add value to this work? How can I put a stamp of excellence on this work? Ask yourself these questions. Don't hesitate to do the most mundane of work, because that puts a foot in the door for you. You gain an entry there, and then you gain an audience with the key people. Ask them questions. Get yourself invited for a meal or some dinner or something like that. Ask them the right questions. Praise them a little bit. Appreciate them a little bit. I'm telling you, people at every level in the organization love appreciation. And let your sponge be at work there. So sponge culture, very important.
Final words on anything that you want to share with us, to the student community at large, to us as a B school, anything that you think are absolutely necessary, priority one.
So I would say that, be ready for the world out there, because I know most of the students here at CMS are not very experienced. For them, it's going to be their first step as you go into internship, and as you go, do a lot of writing, do a lot of learning, and take both the good and the bad. Don't have predefined objectives as this makes me a success and this makes me a failure. Just remember this: if you're learning from it, whatever your salary or lack of salary, whatever your position or lack of position, whatever your title or lack of title, if you're learning, it's a success. So keep learning as the top priority, and that's the number one thing I would say of you, especially for the next few years. Keep learning as the top priority, let all else be later. Pursue knowledge, your salary will follow maybe a little later, but pursue knowledge for the sake of it right now. All the best to you.
Thank you very much, Pramod. It was absolutely a pleasure meeting you.
It was a pleasure
having
to
a chat with you.
Yes.
We'll enjoy having more guests along.
Yeah, all the best for your Just Business series.
Yeah, thank you very much. Bye.